the Sustainability Management Master's Program, you are answering one simple question. Do you care about your future generation? If you care about your kids, their grandkids, then you care about sustainability. And a sustainability manager is someone who has the tools to make people understand how they can contribute towards developing a sustainable world. We have both part-time and full-time students. Our curriculum is 30 hours. Instead of thesis, we have a research project course and a seminar course which provides them with the kind of research background they will need to be successful in their job. But at the same time, sustainability is not always everything about environment. It also relates to the business. They will take a sustainable business strategies course. They will take a project management course. Most of these courses are going to be taught by industry people, the people who are doing sustainability on a daily basis as a part of their job. Any organization that has a large number of employees and has a physical infrastructure, they will have to have a sustainability office. If you have the passion to develop and maintain a sustainable world, come to us and we will help you shape your passion into a career which will create an impact.
It's a pleasure to introduce today's speaker, Dave Barbier. Dave is the Sustainability Director at the University of Wisconsin, Stevens Point, where he's responsible for the day-to-day management of the Office of Sustainability. So the office employs 4 to 6 professional student staff members who report to Dave. And the office oversees all sustainability reporting related to campus efforts, as well as the development of campus-focused sustainability improvements and initiatives. So prior to his current role, Dave was here in New Jersey. He served as the site co-director of resources for the Princeton Blairstown Center at Princeton University, managing the facilities and program resources for 10 years. So Dave earned a Master of Science degree in Environmental Education from Lesley University and holds 2 Bachelor of Science degrees from University of Wisconsin, Stevens Point, one in history and the other in Broadfield Social Science. So he has maintained a LEED GA certification for the last 12 years. So today, Dave will give us some pointers on powering sustainable change on a university campus. So welcome, Dave. All yours.
Great. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here, and Dibs and Khalid, thanks for your work in organizing this, and to all of the sponsors who are putting it on. So it's a pleasure to be with you all today. So here's our title slide just for posterity's sake and the recording. So we're going to be talking about how pointers power sustainable change on the campus. So, and as Dib said, my name is Dave Barbier. I'm the Sustainability Director here at the University of Wisconsin-Stevens Point. So here's our agenda for the day. I'm going to just briefly talk on sort of the beginning formation of the Office of Sustainability and sort of how we got going. The 4 sort of pillars or guiding principles that we generally use to give our elevator speech about sustainability on the campus and what we do. And then towards the end, I'll talk about what we've come to recognize as the 5th pillar that our office really works on. Throughout that, we'll also talk about different techniques and practices that I use and employ with students to help them generate success in terms of whatever projects or work that we're doing. And then we'll talk about some of the external outcomes that have sort of come out of this work over the past 12 years or so. And you'll see as we go through the presentation today, I'm going to not have too much print on the slides and just use that as a guide for the conversation that I want to have with you all. Here on the right or on the left, depending on how you're seeing that on the screen, is our most recent picture of our current staff. So you can see this is Audrey. She handles our events. Anna handles transportation. Rachel handles communication. Catherine is our senior staff lead and handles our free stores. Michelle is a project manager and a graduate research student handling our climate action and resilience plan. This is Sergio Romero. He's our first professional staff that we've been able to hire. So he works 0.6 time and does a lot of data and Tice is the newest member of our staff. And since this photo was taken, we've actually added 3 more folks to this view. So at some point we'll have a current picture, but these staff who are working typically are working 10 hours a week. So, and typically I have 4 paid positions. So, and those students are working 15 weeks a semester or 30 weeks out of the year. So everything you're going to hear me talk about is essentially done through that 30-week window and that 40 hours a week. So essentially I've got the combined work time of 1 other full-time employee during the academic year. So you'll hear me come back and talk about some of these folks as we move forward through the presentation. So that's what we'll cover today. I'm trying to... So getting started, so the office officially started with my hire, which was in 2013. And one of the things that I want to point out is that coming in and starting the office, it was definitely new to our campus, but it wasn't as though we were starting from scratch. There had been a lot of environmental and sustainability related things that had been going on prior to my arrival. Of note, a couple of things in particular, in 2011, the university formally signed a carbon neutrality plan to try and reach carbon neutrality by 2050. And in 2012, they submitted their first ASHE STARS report. If you're not familiar with ASHE STARS, it's a mouthful, but ASHE stands for the Association of the Advancement of Sustainability in Higher Education. And the STARS is the Sustainable Tracking and Rating System, which they use to evaluate higher education institutions and their sustainability rating or ranking. And so when I got here, we had already received a gold level certification. And that was done mainly through a data analyst in our facilities department. And so having a gold rating is a pretty good place to start from. Not to mention that as a campus, we have we host and currently have the oldest college of natural resources in the country. And so there's been a long history of conservation and environmental stewardship on our campus. And in the late 80s, Wisconsin passed recycling legislation mandating recycling in the state. And so our university was one of the early adopters. And so we've had a active recycling program on our campus since 1989. So pretty soon we're going to be coming up on 40 years for that program. So that's pretty exciting. So I just want to give that as background so that way it doesn't seem like we just showed up in 2013 and started from nothing. There was a lot already going on as we sort of launch forward. When I was hired, I was given 2 targets to work towards. Improving the storytelling of our sustainability work as an institution and to make us the #1 sustainability school in the UW system. And so the first one, improving our storytelling, seems pretty apparent, trying to get our word out, do a better job of social media, marketing, that sort of thing. The second one, making us the #1 sustainability school in the UW system, was a little more nebulous. When I asked some of my interview committee, well, what would that look like? Or how would we know if we've achieved that? I got a lot of shoulder shrugs and sort of eye rolling, like, that's a really good question. And that was some good foreshadowing into what a lot of the rest of our work was going to look like, because we didn't really know where we were going or how we were going to get there. And so you'll hear that come out in some of the work that the students have gone through and what they've done. But I'll come back to both of those targets throughout this presentation. So I just want to make you aware of them. The other thing that I think is important was I got some words of advice from a colleague of mine who was doing a similar role at the time at Unity College out in Maine. And they have a very good sustainability ethic. They were the first higher education institution to divest their endowment. And so he said to me at the time, particularly referring to ASHE and the STARS program, saying, don't chase points. Don't try and simply do things because you're trying to get some level. Try and be authentic and let the work come to you in terms of what your campus is ready for. And so I think that's an important piece for students or young professionals going into any place. If you're looking to make change or have it be more sustainable, it's really important to sort of understand what you have to work with and be authentic in that. And then these images here. So this one that's on the bottom, what is your campus doing? That still hangs on my wall today, and I've had it up there since I started here, soon to be 13 years ago. And, or 12 years ago. And what I think it's important and why I bring it up is that while you're going to hear me talk about things that we've done where we've been the first institution to do it, or we do something to 100%, and we love to celebrate those things. And I'll bring up something today that's relatively timely towards the end of this presentation. We don't wait too long on what our celebrations are. We sort of take success, appreciate it, and then move on because we've got more work to do. And so I think that's an important part of our mentality about why we've been successful, is because we're continuing to look at what's next. So I think that's always a good question and a reminder, like, what are you doing? What's coming? Not just saying like, oh, it's great, we did that, we're done. And then this shirt is here because this is like one of the first things that we did in our office to sort of start our storytelling. And one of the unique stories that I have with this is we got these shirts created in 2014, and we used that to help drive people to engage with our social media. They had to come, and if they wanted to get a shirt, they had to follow us on Facebook to sort of start building our numbers, because we had literally 0 followers when I started. And in the winter of that year, the valedictorian for our graduating class in December was interviewed by the local newspaper. And in that interview, they took a picture of him on campus. And incidentally enough, he just happened to be wearing this shirt. And so I think for me, that's just sort of a great insight into, you never know how that marketing or storytelling or word of mouth is going to play out for you. And so the fact that we were able to get this pictured right into the newspaper with basically only being around a year or so, I felt like that was a pretty big win. And so it's just a nice little story about like, this is where we started from and where we're, what sort of launched us on our path. So I talked about these different pillars. We're going to sort of go through them. You heard me mention the 2 targets and storytelling. So I just got to talk a little bit about that, and you're going to start to see how the students come into this roles and responsibilities of this work. So on the picture on the screen is from our link tree. So you can see we're sort of active on these platforms. We also just launched a LinkedIn account, which isn't up there yet. We've also got a Threads account, so we've got to update some of that. But you can find this on our Instagram page, which I have linked at the end, and you can check out all of our different social media. But when I started, the first thing I did was just some qualitative benchmarking. And so if we're going to talk about our story, we need to know what our story is. We need to know what our weaknesses are, what our strengths are, and sort of what other stories people are already telling. So I spent the first half a year just interviewing and meeting with a lot of people to better understand where the university was, what people thought we were doing well, and what our weaknesses are. And so if we're going to improve our storytelling, we have to sort of know where we're working from. So I think that's important. Wherever you're going, you have to have those conversations in all the sectors. It's not just the obvious places. You need to talk to athletics. You need to talk to the fundraising department. You need to talk to facility services. You need to talk to academic deans. And so it's important to get that full message, so that way when you're starting to go out and do the storytelling, you know the people to talk to, you know what the story already is, you know where you have opportunities to gain. And then we started building our social media. And so that was really our next step. There was no Office of Sustainability social media at the time. And so we really put the work into trying to build that. And now I say social media empire, clearly that's a little tongue in cheek. But there are some things that are important that I want to share with you about that. One is that currently our university has 4 colleges within it. We have a College of Letters and Science, a College of Natural Resources, College of Professional Studies, and a College of Fine Arts and Communication. The College of Letters and Science is probably our biggest school by volume, and our College of Fine Arts and Communication is really well known. We essentially have about the same amount of followers on our Facebook profile as they do. And so they're serving thousands of students and have been around for decades. We've been around for 10 years and we serve handfuls of students comparatively. And so I think it's important to know that, like, in that 10-year window, we did a lot to really move the needle in terms of what our audience is. Now, some of our other colleges have a little bit more. College of Natural Resources, College of Professional Studies, they're all in the upper 5,000s. Our athletics department is 8,500. So it gives you some idea of where we sit in that sort of storytelling, given that we're such a young department on our campus compared to others. The other thing that I want to bring up with this social media part is that I don't do any of this at all. This is completely driven and run by students. So students generate our graphics. Rachel is the student who handles our communication. So she plans our delivery. She coordinates with other members of our team about events that they're doing, so that way she can prioritize where they need to fit in our social media calendar. We also have subsidiary accounts that we manage. We have one for bicycling on campus. We have one for mindful eating. And so there's a lot of social media content coming through our office that's all being driven by students. And so as we start to get into this conversation further, it's just good to know that this sort of work and what we're doing to tell our story in this way, all in the hands of students at this point. And this is storytelling that the university reshares, that they look to for branding work. So it's important to know that we're not just doing it for our office, but that these are things that the university is taking and running with as well. Word of mouth is always important. So I'm continually telling this to our students, but also to our community members, our business partners. We're always trying to get the word of mouth out about what we're doing, how we're doing it, and just trying to create engagement. And so that's really important. We've found the shirts, while everybody seems to have enough shirts, students are never walking away from a shirt or a Frisbee or some other part of the branding that the word of mouth can bring by people taking something with them and talking about it. So, and our students, again, are the ones behind creating this, evaluating what would be best, what are students going to like, that sort of thing. Two last points I want to touch on here in the storytelling is, one, this is mission impossible. And what I mean by that is, regardless of any or all of this work that we do, we still have people telling us, oh, well, I wish you would have told us that, or I wish we would have known. And so no matter how many message of the day emails we include our work on, or how much social media put out, or how many interviews we do with the radio station or traditional media, it's never enough. And so you just have to get used to that, but I think it's an important factor. And then one of the guiding principles that we've developed in this, or that I've come to realize, is that as an institution, if you can be first, or you can do something 100%, that really creates a great story. And so we try and focus on those things in our storytelling as much as possible. But again, these are students who are coming up with our word of mouth ideas and our takeaway items. These are students who are running our social media. So they're already engaged in our sustainability work just from the storytelling aspect. And that's all driven by, what I was originally hired to do. The next pillar is data management. So you can see in this upper corner the sustainable tracking, assessment, and rating system, the AC STARS program that we talked about. This is our gold certification. I'm going to come back to sort of why this is important and how it plays into things. Our bike-friendly university certification is another second large piece of data that our office manages. And so there's a story behind this as well that I'll get to. Right here, you can see our latest greenhouse gas emission report. So this is really telling a good story. You can see this dotted line. This is where we were supposed to be if we were meeting our carbon neutrality plan goals. And as you can see, our actual goal, our actual footprint is down here. So we're well ahead of schedule. We were supposed to hit a 50% reduction from 2007 by 2030, and essentially 2024 put us at 51%. So we're essentially 5 to 6 years ahead of schedule. And again, all of this plays into our storytelling, and I'll get back to that. One of the things I want to point out is that this branding of being powered by 100% renewable electricity. You can see in our reporting graph here in 2015, we were probably pushing about 11,000 metric tons of CO2 from our purchased electricity. And then in 2016, it dropped to 0. And so that's because we moved forward with purchasing 100% renewable energy credits to offset our electrical footprint. And so we've kept that for the last 8 years. I'm assuming what it'll be 9 years going forward. And so that's been a big part of how we've been able to bring this reduction in line. And then lastly, B Campus USA. So this is another sort of student initiative, but also data and also storytelling. So I'm going to come back to these and just fill you in a little bit on them as because I think they're really important. So the STARS Gold, we've gone through, I think, 5 star certifications since I've been here. We've had 1 silver that came out shortly after COVID. So it's not maybe surprising that that was the case. And then we filed a resubmission in 23 and 2024 and got certified as a gold again in 2024. One of the interesting things about this that I want to share with you all is that at the time, to get a gold rating in STARS, you need to get a 65 or better. We received a 72, and that was the first time we'd ever broken 70. And so Sergio, who you saw in the opening picture, who's working for us now, at the time was a graduate research assistant in our office. And we went back and we looked at what the other UW system schools had done as it related to their reporting and what their scores has been. And what we found out is that no other school since reporting has started for AC STARS in the UW system has broken a 70 score. And so by getting a 72, we established quite concretely that as it relates to the UW system, we're the best quantitative sustainability school in the UW system right now. And so going back to those original 2 targets I talked about in the opening slide, this is one of the ways we can now look and say, well, definitively, yes, until somebody gets a better score than what we've got, we're the #1 sustainability school in the UW system. And so that becomes a nice little sort of opportunity for us to market to students. And one of the things that's important with all of this is that I think it's about 80% of students consider sustainability or the environmental actions of a university when considering where to go. So this sort of rating really becomes a marketing tool that our admissions office, our enrollment office is using to help recruit students. And so that's a pretty great nugget coming from this data that we're putting together. Now we can use that in our storytelling. Now we can use that in our recruitment. And that last report was put together by a graduate student working with undergraduates in our office. And it's important to note that that is a very comprehensive certification. Whether you're buying your food or, you know, looking at your endowment or what classes you're taking or where your power is coming from, when that report is done, it's a 300 to a 350 page volume report about your sustainability work. For the Bike Friendly University, the story I want to tell you about students and their engagement is students came to me with this, I think in 2016, 2017, and said, hey, we want to be a bike friendly university. I said, hey, that's great. You work on putting the application together and our office will cover the application fee, which I think that application fee at the time was around $100 or $150. And so they submitted our first application, and the League of American Bicyclists came back to us and said, sorry, that doesn't cut it. You've got to do better. And so we went back to the drawing board. Some of the students who worked on that original application graduated and a couple remained. And so they brought in a couple of new people and we resubmitted again and we got what was called an honorable mention. And so not really a story you want to tell when you're getting an honorable mention. So we went back to the drawing board for a 3rd time and we really started to put some resources into this. We were able to get some administrative funding for a student position. We created a campus bike and pedestrian task force. We created a campus bike and pedestrian master plan. We did bike audits, bike counts. And in 2019, a third student put in another submission. And this time we got a bronze certification. And so that certification, as you can see here from the slide, is good for 4 years. And so working from the bronze, then our next goal was to simply move us up another tier. And so again, Sergio and Catherine, along with a couple of other volunteers, put in a lot of work into our most recent application. And in 2023, we were certified as a silver bike-friendly university. And it's important, again, I can't restate enough how this goes into our marketing, how it plays into our student recruitment, how it plays to the university storytelling about our sustainability message. And that's being done on the backs of students working in this office 10 hours a week, 30 weeks a year. So our students are having a significant impact to the campus through that storytelling and through that data collection and management. And then lastly, this Beat Campus USA program. A student came to me in 2019 in September and said, hey, I'm a freshman. I'm interested in pursuing our B Campus certification for the university. Is that something you all would do? And I said, no, but if you want to lead us in that process, then I'm happy to support you. And this student, her name was Abby. Abby would tell you now after graduating that she was pretty shy. She had some anxiety coming in as an undergrad. And we put her to work on sort of building our B Campus committee, which had to consist of faculty, staff, students. I put her directly in charge of this committee. So she's leading faculty that she has class with, for example. But when it comes to this meeting and this committee, the roles are sort of switched in terms of her leading the group, being responsible for making sure faculty are showing up, doing the work that they say they're going to do. And into the spring semester, she had to write an email and send a letter to our chancellor that he needed to sign off on and approve as we pursued this designation. And eventually she got the email back from the chancellor with a signed copy of the letter on official university letterhead. And that was our last piece that we needed to make our submission and essentially get certified as B Campus. And so at the end of that year, Abby made a note to me. She said, you know, it's probably not a lot of freshmen who are, you know, asking for the chancellor's approval and getting letters of endorsement from the chancellor for different programs for the campus. And I said, that is absolutely correct. That's a very small window of students who are doing that kind of work. And incidentally, we were the first B Campus in the UW system. So again, going back to that storytelling, now we've got a story to tell because not only are we a B Campus, but we're the first B Campus. And so that really puts us in a forefront of sustainability leadership. And that comes with all the things that we do. Like if you want to be the first, that means you're going to have to do something that nobody's ever done before. And so that sort of sets our mentality for how we do our sustainability work. Incidentally, because of that, since then, multiple campuses in the UW system have gotten certified as B campuses. Those B campuses in particular reached out to Abby for guidance about like, how did you do this? What was involved? How do I get started? And so really taking that leadership on for other institutions as well through some of the work that we're doing. Our next pillar is focused on education and outreach. So we've really got 4 areas for that. The first is just sort of in the classroom, like what you might imagine, right? And so that's typically me going into the classroom and guest lecturing on any particular topic or area of interest. And so I go into classes in all of our colleges, whether that's fine arts and communication or College of Letters and Science or professional studies, and talking about, or the College of Natural Resources, and talking about all sorts of different things depending on the class structure. So we do pre-service teacher learning. I'm going into our choir department coming up here in a couple of weeks. And so policy classes, all sorts of different things. And so that's pretty basic and obvious. One of the things that we learned from our STARS reporting is that we needed to do a better job of training our staff. And so we started developing this green recognition of office and workspace program, or we call it GROW for short. You can see that down there on the bottom. This program took years to launch. It probably took 7 years of production over probably 4 or 5 different sets of students working on this on the sort of side as they worked on their other projects. That's part of why it took so long. But then we've launched this program in the, let's see, I think the spring of 23, winter of 23. And we've since certified over 24 offices and spoke to hundreds of members on the campus. And so talking to the staff, you can see this is our Housing and Residence Life. They're one of our most recent recipients. And so as they go through this, it starts with an opening presentation from our program director for this, who happens to be Rachel, who handles our communication. And so she goes and presents to them, talks to them about the program. There's a checklist that they go through, and it's focused not only on what they can do in the office to be more sustainable, but also some of the things that they might do in their own personal life that sort of bleed over. This has also had an impact in our purchasing department. So we have a general stores that purchases office supplies and items for quick access for our departments on campus. Because of the development of this program, they've shifted and put a lot more sustainable product into their inventory. And so we're spending more of our campus dollars on sustainability focused product. And that's all from student work and initiative that Rachel has continued to put into the project. So we're making purchasing impacts for the campus that there are lots of people who are probably not even aware of. And so that office work and really generating connection to people in your office, whatever, is really important. Means next we'll go to the next slide for the campus and for the public. So on the campus, you can see in this picture, the MREA table, that stands for the Midwest Renewable Energy Association. They're a local renewable energy group. And the woman standing behind the table, her name is Kenzie Luderbach. Kenzie is a former Poynter alum and was an employee in our office for 2 years. And so she's currently in this photo tabling at a sustainability vendor fair. That vendor fair we put on every October. It's open to the campus, but it's open to the public as well. We bring in outside groups, outside businesses, internal departments, internal student organizations, and they all come in and table, so that way students, especially new students, can get a sense of what are the sustainability focused businesses and organizations that are operating in the community we're in. And it's also a great opportunity for those businesses to connect with students. We're a small community of about 30,000 here in Stevens Point, 50,000 if you take all of the area, and our campus population is around 8,000, 7,500 to 8,000. So when our students are here in session, that's a big impact on our community. And so businesses and organizations want that opportunity to reach out to them. That event typically serves around 350 to 500 people at a time, and that's all put together by students. So they're doing the outreach, they're doing the planning, they're working with parking services, catering, doing the recruitment of vendors, the whole 9 yards. And so again, that's where students are engaging in this education and outreach by helping to put all of this together and host the event. And then this other slide here was from a recent event we had at the end of February, our climate action and resilience planning process. That brought in both businesses, local governments, community members from all of the communities that our campus operates in. We have branch campuses in 2 other communities outside of Stevens Point. And so again, bringing them in, having them provide feedback on our campus climate action and resilience plan. And so that's another way we're getting out into the public and working with them. Next initiatives, I am mindful of the time. So, okay, I got about 15 minutes left tops. So this initiative, we're going to get into, this is really where we start to see students taking the lead on work that's being done on the campus. You can see these bins over here that are brown and just with a single branding across the top. These were our old waste collection system on campus. You can see they don't really do a great job of telling us what needs to go where. And some of them are even confusing, like this waste bin that's got a recycling sticker by it. So how are we recycling our waste? It's a little confusing. Incidentally, on our campus, we have a soil and waste management degree. And so one of those students back in, I think around 2017 said, this branding and education about what goes in the bins is horrible and we need to update it. And so as we looked at this, originally we looked at trying to find a new trash collection system. But we realized that if we do that, we're going to have to get rid of all of these units. And at the time, we had about 110 of these stations across the campus. So that's about 440 of these bins that we were either going to have to get rid of or recycle or put into our surplus operation. And so rather than doing that, because it would also be expensive not only to get rid of, but then to replace, we came up with this other idea where why don't we just create new skins or stickers that could go on these bins? And so the students worked with our university marketing office to make sure that the branding was going to go along with university guidelines. They worked with facility services to think about how we could reduce space in going from the 4-bin to a 3-bin. And I'll tell you why that's important in a minute. And then also really trying to make sure and clarify what goes into what bin, right? And so you can see, rather than this confusing waste sign with a recycling symbol, it just became trash for landfill, right? And sort of the mixed recycling, we've got that those icons on there so people can really start to understand what needs to go in each bin. And so this was a collaboration between our Student Government Association, our Facility Services, our Office of Sustainability, our University Communication and Marketing. And so this is a group of students who then changed our complete waste collection system across the campus. And so now anywhere you go, this is what it looks like. And it looks like that because students wanted to see a change. And so it's about figuring out how do we empower them to do that. Next, here are some other initiatives that I just want to talk to about how students have an impact. So in the last slide, I told you that we went from 4 bins to 3 bins. We did that because we were also starting to launch this composting system. And so we had some test composting going on in our res halls in 2012, 2013, and students wanted to know why they could compost in the res halls, but not on our campus. They said, well, we could do that, but we've got to put some work into that. And so we started with doing some outreach to all of our deans and a couple of building managers to say like, hey, we'd like to test this out. Are you amenable to that? And so we did a 6-week beta test with these bins in 6 buildings. And after that 6 weeks, we basically went to the deans and the building managers and said like, okay, hit us with what, why did this not work? What other problems? What do we need to change to make it effective? We essentially got no comments. It was crickets. Nobody had anything negative to say about it. And so from that, students went through and took the initiative to put together a green fund proposal. I'll talk about the green fund in a little bit. To get enough bins to put a bin in every academic and administrative building on campus. And so that was our sort of second phase. And so we got funding for that and we launched that. And at that point, we had 1 compost bin on the 1st floor of every building, and that was it. So if you wanted to compost and you were on the 4th floor, you had to do it at the end of the day or make a trip down to do it. From that, we started to get a lot of interest. People wanted more compost bins. They wanted more access. The desire was definitely there. The other thing that was great about this is, again, we were the first UW school to have composting in every academic and administrative building on their campus. And I think that's still true to this day. And so again, that creates a story for us to tell. We're doing something that isn't being done on any other campus across the system. And so this led to a third grant appeal and putting 2 bins on every building, or 2 bins in every building on our campus, and as well as expanding this into all of our res hall kitchens. The fourth expansion of this came a couple of years later when we hired a new CBO, and she just said, we need to have compost on every floor of every building. And so she, working with facility services, helped make that happen. And so again, we have composting on every floor of every building on our campus because students wanted to see it and they wanted the access to it. And so it was really their initiative that drove us to that place. But going back to the beginning slide, like, we didn't know how that was going to end up. So a couple of other things you can see here, electric vehicle charging station. Again, this was an initiative driven by students. Why don't we have EV charging stations? Let's go out and get one. We want to make sure that we can have that accessible. This happens to be right at our welcome center. And so that's another recruitment tool. When people are coming to campus for the first time, they're greeted with an EV charging station if they need it, in which, as we know, EVs are only growing and growing. This bike shelter here was our first covered bike shelter on campus. This took two different students over the course of 3 years to get completed and get funding for. There's also a bike repair station in the back, and that's because students wanted to see it. And they were motivated to have it. And that also played a role in our bike-friendly university certification, which also plays a role in our storytelling and recruitment, all because students are saying, hey, we want this. And then lastly, these 4 pictures are all from our free store program. So we had a student in 2017, 2018 year who said, I want to try and capture some of the school supplies for move out so we could create a reuse program so students don't always have to buy new pens, pencils, notebooks, that sort of thing. And so that started with 2 basically 50-gallon garbage cans rolling in from move out of school supplies that got turned in. And we had that in 1 room in our building in Nelson Hall, which fortunately we have a lot of space in. If you come to our office now, you'll find out that this little program that started in 1 room now takes up 10 rooms. It has clothing, it has personal supplies, it has living supplies, it has academic supplies. We have a large free little library. We've got free games and puzzles, and we serve hundreds of students a year. So we're keeping items out of the landfill. We're providing resources for students who have socioeconomic needs, and basically just a vast variety of resources for students in general, all because some student wanted to start collecting school supplies from move out. So again, student initiative that started as 1 little room and a couple of garbage cans full of supplies. And our clothing store in particular, we have partners with our Queer Resource Center, our Academic Career and Advising Center, our business school, and our Gender Sexuality Alliance. And so it's a safe space for students who might be transitioning. We have professional interviewers coming in for the business class who take students there and make them find interview clothes that they can get there. So if they need to go for an interview or a professional thing, they don't have to buy it new, they can just get it there. And so those partnerships are just another important part of that word of mouth and storytelling. And again, all students. So techniques and practices, I'm a little behind, so I'm going to try and fly through these, but how do we do what we do? So when students are hired, I make sure to let them know that this is not an easy job, that they're going to be given a lot of responsibility, that they aren't going to be around to be able to put their feet up and check their Facebook. Like, if you're coming in, you have work to do. And I tell the students right away, when you're here working, you're not a student at the university, you're a professional employee of the Office of Sustainability, and I expect you to act like it. And so this is part of the empowerment of them going out and having conversations with directors or deans or chancellors about what we're working on. I also let them know that it's okay if they fail. We're going to be asking them to do things that they haven't done before, and that failure is part of trying and learning. And so what I tell them is that if they fail, that's okay. We're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about what they thought was going to happen compared to what actually did happen, how they could change that for the next time. So we're learning from that. And then we're going forward and we're on to the next thing. And the other thing that I tell them about failing is if they're out on the campus or they're having an email dialogue and somebody gets upset with them and they don't know how to handle it, that they can just send them to me and that I will deal with it because I'm the one who are putting the students in this position to begin with. And so I think that creates a nice safety net for them to know like, oh, well, if something does go wrong, I'm just going to pass the buck and Dave's going to handle it. Some of the next things we do is we work on SMART goals. So if you don't know, SMART goals is an acronym, stands for specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and timely. And so all of our students, undergrads, graduate researchers, they all write SMART goals. And so that's part of the culture that the students understand. I don't give them some form or template to say you need to write it in this way. So they're sort of unique for each person. My data guy sends me an Excel spreadsheet. I got another person who puts it in a table. Some people write it in prose form. I don't really care as long as they're using that acronym to get the goals set up. And then we review them. And a lot of times they'll overlap between personal and professional growth. And so an example of that might be somebody's got not confident speaking in public. Then we might talk about like, well, what are your goals for doing that? Well, I'm going to do 5 tabling events. And at each event, I'm going to talk to 5 new people. Okay, great. Now that's something quantifiable we can measure. And then when we have a one-on-one or a check-in, we can talk about how that's going. And those combination, I think, of personal and professional goals make a big impact because students start to see that we're not just concerned about how many widgets they're making or what they can do for us, but that we're actually focused on their own growth and development as people. And part of why that's important is because a lot of the students, when they're coming in, say like, I've never had a job like this before. So this is the first time I've ever had to do anything like this. We also have one-on-one meetings every 2 weeks. And so why this is important is that regardless of what's going on, they know that they get an hour with me every 2 weeks. And that meeting is for them. I expect them to bring the agenda for the most part about what we want to talk about. Sometimes it's a full hour, sometimes it's 10 minutes because my door is almost always open to them. And sometimes it's work related and sometimes people just have relationship issues and they want to talk. But that time is theirs and they know it's theirs and they can use it how they want. And so that's another thing that I think really matters for them is they know they have that space where if they have questions or concerns, they can get them answered. If they just want to inform me on a couple of things and move on, we do it. And then some cultural things that we do. For about the last 7 years, we've had a different theme that we've explored as a staff every year. These themes are broad, general ideas. It started with confidence. We've talked about leadership, empowerment, peace, the wellness. Right now, we're focusing on feedback. And so that theme is just a way of something that brings us all together every year that we're all sort of exploring together. And we have a big blank wall in our office and we ask a new question every 2 weeks. And then we ask people to put their answers on the wall. So people are literally taping responses or images on the wall to those questions. And so we're sort of building this collage of an art project all year as well. And so that keeps the students engaged and growing in a completely different way than their work. And then the other thing that we have all of our staff do is go through our faculty, staff, and Gender Sexuality Alliance Safe Zone training. So we have people coming from all walks of life with all sorts of histories working in our office. And so that Safe Zone training just lets students know that that's the expectation, that we're going to create a space for everybody. The next is money. I'm going to try and keep cruising through these. Money plays a big role for students. So first of all, when they're hired and we're putting them onto payroll, this is their first introduction into like figuring things out on their own. I don't do anything with the payroll for my students other than sign off on the payroll. So when they have to learn their hours or how to put their time in, I send them to the payroll department or tell them to communicate with them to figure it out. So that's really throwing them into the deep end of the pool right away. I'm like, if you want to get paid, then you got to figure out how to put your time in. Next is the Green Fund. So you heard me talk about all these different initiatives. In 2012, our Student Government Association passed a university-wide student referendum to create a Green Fund. That green fund is essentially $12 a year, so $1 a month that students pay above and beyond their traditional SEG fees to provide funding for sustainable infrastructure improvements on the campus. We can't fly to conferences. We don't bring in guest speakers. It's for nuts and bolts kind of work. And so as you can see from all of those initiatives that I showed you, that's a lot of what they are. And so we do a lot of work with the Green Fund to help provide the seed money to make these changes happen. There are other community grants which we can access, but oftentimes those grants and agencies will say, well, have you written a Green Fund for this? And if we haven't, they sort of say, well, why don't you go do that first? And then if you can't find funding, come back to us. We also do pursue other grants. So one of the exciting things today, this pro bono consulting that I have listed here comes from Second Nature. Second Nature is a national nonprofit that focuses on climate solutions in higher ed. They just had their 5th round of this. And I'm happy to say they just made the public announcement today. And we are one of 7 recipients to receive this consulting. It's $25,000 worth of climate consulting work. And so there were 6 other institutions that got that. But what I really want to point out to you all is that it's an undergraduate in our office, Audrey, who is in that first picture, who was our primary investigator and wrote the grant. And so when she graduates, she's going to be walking out and being able to put on her resume that she received a $25,000 grant for the institution to help us with our decarbonization efforts. There aren't a lot of students walking out of any college who can say they've already earned or received a $25,000 grant. So it's pretty great to be putting students into those positions to succeed. The Pathways Grant is an internal grant to our campus that I've started to take advantage of that helps to provide funding for students on campus, undergraduates. And that's been great over the last 4 or 5 years. I've been able to take advantage of that, put more undergraduates into our office. That helps us to get more things done. But it's also going back to that sort of mission impossible statement I had at the beginning, where this program has been going on for years, and I only started to learn about it just before COVID. And so there was 5 or 6 years where I could have been tapping into this, but I just didn't know it was there. And then lastly, talking about salaries, our students could definitely go elsewhere and make more money. They could go to Target and work as a cashier and make more money than what they do working for me, and probably with less stress. But we do start our students at $13 an hour and basically try and give them raises every year that when they're here. The top salary I paid to a student was last year. I was paying her $15.50 an hour by the time she left. And so while you could be making more money, as you can see, all of these responsibilities that come with this work really build a resume in ways that other potential jobs don't. And one of the things that I'll tell you about how do I know these techniques and practices work is that about 90 to 95% of our students don't leave our employment until they graduate. So once students start working for us, they don't leave because they're being pushed, because they're being challenged, because they're being given these opportunities, they tend to stay involved. And so that leads to my next pillar, which I've come to realize in probably the last 2 or 3 years of what we do is we build leadership, right? The students who are leaving our office are coming out more positive, more confident. They have a more holistic focus. They know how to work independently. They know how to be collaborative. They know how to think critically. And so that's really the next thing that we're doing is we're building leaders for the future. And so like, as much as I love our greenhouse gas emissions being reduced by 50%, I don't love it as much as thinking about how our students are going to go out and impact the world after they graduate. Couple of quick things I'll touch on for other outcomes. We work a lot with our planning department within the city. We've had numerous students working there, infusing sustainability into the city planning. The city just created their first sustainability committee just this past fall. We work with a lot of businesses, as you've heard me talk about, and our students go out and our employees in the community. And then we have businesses that are sort of populated out of our work. This is Kelly Adlington here. She was a student in our waste management degree program. Her capstone class was on curbside compost collection systems. When she graduated, she started her own curbside compost collection system in Stevens Point. And so now we've got a composting opportunity in Stevens Point that didn't exist before that. We've had students graduate, go on and start this cooperative bookshop, which is a travel bookshop that's focused on more sustainability and social justice related issues. And then this is a friend of mine, Trevor. He started during COVID a bike and carbon neutral transportation delivery service. We've had multiple students working with him on that, and we help to like just market and promote that when we can. So definitely making impacts in the community. And then lastly, I know I'm a bit over time, but here's my contact info and our socials with some QR codes so they're easy for you to grab. So I hope that's been beneficial and informative, and I'm happy to talk and take any questions.
Oh, absolutely. That was a very informative presentation.